Amara Johnson thought surviving 9 years as a single mother was the hardest thing she'd ever face, until one rainy night changed everything. Her beat-up Honda kissed the bumper of a black sedan, worth more than her yearly rent, and suddenly she was staring into the storm-grey eyes of the most dangerous man in the city. What she didn't know was that her clumsy accident had just saved his life, disrupted a carefully planned assassination, and painted a target on her 7-year-old son's back. For 9 years, Dario Vitale hadn't touched a woman, couldn't even bear the thought after losing everything that mattered. But when this fierce single mother crashed into his world, she didn't just dent his car, she shattered every wall he'd built around his heart. Now, with enemies closing in and innocent lives hanging in the balance, he'll have to choose between the safety of distance and the terrifying vulnerability of love. Subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because this story is about to prove that sometimes the most beautiful accidents lead to the most dangerous obsessions. The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 a.m., just like it did every morning. Amara Johnson's eyes snapped open in the grey darkness of her cramped apartment. Her feet hit the cold linoleum floor before her mind fully woke up. She moved through her morning routine like a dancer who knew every step by heart. First, she checked on Malik. Her 7-year-old son slept curled up like a question mark, his inhaler on the nightstand within arm's reach. His breathing sounded clear this morning. Good. In the kitchen, she counted out his pills and packed his lunch. Peanut butter and jelly again. She added an apple she couldn't really afford, and a juice box from the case she bought on sale. The rent notice on the counter caught her eye. Late again. The bright red letters seemed to glow in the dim light. "Morning, baby," she whispered as Malik shuffled into the kitchen, hair sticking up in every direction. "Morning, Mama." His voice was still thick with sleep. She helped him with his inhaler, counting the puffs, like always. "Good job. You remember what to do if it gets hard to breathe at school? Tell the nurse. Use my backup inhaler. Call you if it's really bad." He recited the words like a prayer. "That's my smart boy." Amara walked him to the bus stop, watching until the yellow door closed behind him. Then she hurried to the diner for the morning shift. The Sunrise Diner smelled like coffee and hope. Amara tied her apron and grabbed the coffee pot. She knew every regular customer by name and how they liked their eggs. Mrs. Peterson wanted them over easy with wheat toast. Mr. Garcia liked them scrambled with hot sauce on the side. At 2 p.m., her manager, Dale, called her over. His bald head was shiny with sweat, and he wouldn't look her in the eye. "I gotta cut your hours, Amara. Business is slow." Her stomach dropped. "Dale, I need those hours. You know I do. I'm sorry. Nothing I can do about it." But she saw the new girl working the section that used to be hers. The girl was young and blonde, and probably didn't have a kid to feed. Amara bit back the words she wanted to say. Instead, she smiled. "I understand." She finished her shift with half the table she normally worked. When she counted her tips, her heart sank. $23. Not nearly enough. At home, she made mac and cheese for dinner and ate half of hers so Malik could have seconds. While he did his homework at the kitchen table, she opened her laptop and looked for extra work. A delivery job caught her eye. Good pay for night runs. She could do it after Malik went to sleep. "Mama, can you help me with this?" Malik held up his math worksheet. "Of course, baby." They worked through the problems together. Malik was smart, just like his father had been, before everything went wrong. After Malik brushed his teeth and said his prayers, she tucked him into bed. "I love you, Mama. I love you more than all the stars in the sky." She kissed his forehead. "Sleep tight." She waited until she heard his breathing get deep and even. Then she grabbed her keys and headed out for her first delivery run. Rain drummed against the windshield as Amara drove through the narrow streets. The takeout bag on the passenger seat smelled like Chinese food and made her stomach growl. She hadn't eaten much dinner. The customer lived in the fancy part of town where the streetlights were brighter and the houses had gates. She followed her GPS down a winding road, squinting through the rain. The light ahead turned yellow. She pressed the gas, thinking she could make it, but the road was slicker than she thought. Her tires lost their grip. Time slowed down. The black sedan appeared out of nowhere, or maybe she appeared out of nowhere to it. Either way, metal met metal with a crunch that made her teeth ache. Steam rose from both cars like ghosts in the rain. Amara sat frozen, her hands still gripping the wheel. Her old Honda was no match for the fancy car she'd hit. The sedan looked like it cost more than she made in 5 years. A man stepped out of the other car. He was tall and broad, wearing a dark coat that fit him perfectly. Even in the rain, he moved with the kind of control that made her think of dangerous animals. His dark hair was slicked back, and his eyes were the color of winter storms. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. This was bad, really bad. She got out of her car on shaking legs. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see you in time." "The rain. Are you hurt?" His voice was low and calm. He had an accent she couldn't place. The question surprised her. Most people would be yelling by now. No, I don't think so." He stepped closer, his eyes scanning her face. "You're bleeding." She reached up and felt wetness at her temple. When she looked at her fingers, they came away red. The world tilted sideways. She grabbed the car door to keep from falling. "Easy," he said, reaching toward her. His hand stopped just an inch from her face. For a moment, they both stood frozen in the rain. She could feel the heat from his skin. Then he pulled back like he'd been burned. "We should exchange insurance," she said, trying to sound normal. "Take pictures. Do the whole thing right." He nodded, of course. But as they took photos and wrote down information, Amara noticed things that didn't add up. His car had bulletproof glass. His license plate was the kind that cost extra. And when other cars slowed down to look, they sped up when they saw him. "I can drive myself home," she said when he offered to call someone. "In that?" He looked at her crumpled Honda. Steam was still coming from under the hood. "It's not that bad." "You won't drive that tonight." It wasn't a question. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Luca, I need a tow truck and arrange for a loaner car. I can't afford—" "Insurance will cover it." A tow truck appeared within minutes. Too fast for a regular call. The driver loaded her car without asking any questions. Then a man in a suit brought her keys to a black Honda that looked brand new. "Courtesy loaner," the dark-eyed man said, "until yours is fixed." Amara wanted to argue, but she had a delivery to finish and bills to pay, and Malik was home alone. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded once. "Drive carefully." She got in the loaner car and drove away. In her rearview mirror, she saw him standing in the rain, watching her go. The delivery was late, but the customer was understanding. Amara drove home through empty streets, her head still fuzzy from the accident. The loaner car was nicer than anything she'd ever driven. It made her own problems feel smaller and bigger at the same time. Outside her apartment building, she noticed a group of men hanging around the entrance. One of them was her ex-boyfriend, Marcus. The other two she didn't recognize, but they had the same look as the men Marcus had started running with before she left him. Her stomach clenched. Marcus only showed up when he wanted something. Usually, money she didn't have. She parked and hurried toward the building, keeping her eyes down, but Marcus stepped into her path. Well, look who's driving fancy cars now." His smile was sharp as broken glass. "I'm just trying to get home, Marcus. We need to talk." "No, we don't. We have nothing to talk about." His friends moved closer. One of them cracked his knuckles. "Get out of my way," Amara said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "Or what? You'll call the cops?" Marcus laughed. "We both know how that works out." A bottle shattered against the building wall. Glass rained down on the sidewalk. Amara ran. She took the stairs 2 at a time, her key ready before she reached her door. Inside, she locked the deadbolt and put the chain on. Her hands were shaking so hard it took 3 tries. Malik was still asleep, thank God. She checked on him twice to make sure he was breathing okay. Her phone buzzed with a text from a number she didn't recognize. "We see you." She turned off all the lights and stood by the window looking down at the street. The men were gone, but she had the feeling someone was still watching. Another car pulled up. This one was expensive and quiet. A man got out, but she couldn't see his face in the darkness. He stood there for a long moment, then got back in and drove away. Tires squealed in the distance. Amara double-checked all the locks and pushed a chair in front of the door. She wouldn't sleep much tonight. Again. Morning light made everything look normal again. Almost. The cracked window in the living room told a different story. Amara took pictures with her phone and thought about calling the police. But what would she tell them? Some guys threw a bottle? Marcus was her ex? They'd file a report and nothing would change. At the diner, Dale cut her section again. This time he gave it to the new girl without even looking sorry about it. "Table 6 wants coffee," he said instead of hello. Table 6 was a man with slicked back hair and eyes like chips of ice. He watched her pour his coffee like she was a bug under a microscope. When she set down his cup, he smiled. "You look familiar," he said. "I don't think we've met." She started to walk away. "Sure we have. Through mutual friends." His smile got wider. "Marcus sends his regards." Her blood went cold. This was one of the men from last night. I'm working, she said. Of course you are. Hard worker. I respect that. He pulled out a 20 and set it on the table. For the coffee. The bill was $2. Keep the change, he said. You look like you need it. Heat flashed through her. She picked up the 20 and set it back down in front of him. No, thank you. His smile disappeared. That's not very friendly. I'm not feeling very friendly today. She walked away on legs that felt like jelly. At the register, she saw him throw the money on the floor and leave. After her shift, she walked to her car. The man was waiting outside, leaning against a black SUV. We got off on the wrong foot, he said. I don't think so. He pushed off the SUV and stepped toward her. Marcus thinks you owe him. From the old days. I don't owe Marcus anything. That's not how he sees it, and neither do his new friends. A car pulled up to the curb. Not just any car. The black sedan from last night. The one she'd crashed into. The dark-eyed man got out. He didn't say anything. Didn't even look at her. But the man who'd been bothering her took one look at him and stepped back. This isn't over, he said. But he was already walking away. The dark-eyed man waited until the SUV was gone. Then he looked at her. Are you all right? Why do you keep showing up? Wrong question. What's the right question? Why did they leave when they saw me? She didn't have an answer for that, and something told her she didn't want one. I have to pick up my son, she said. He nodded. Drive safe. But as she drove to Malik's school, she saw the black sedan in her rearview mirror, following at a distance. Protecting or stalking, she couldn't tell. Malik's school called during the lunch rush. Mrs. Johnson, this is Nurse Patricia. Malik is having some trouble breathing. His inhaler isn't helping much. Can you come in? Amara's heart stopped. I'll be right there. She ran 3 blocks to the pharmacy for a refill, then another 4 blocks to the school. Her lungs burned and her side ached, but she didn't slow down. Malik was sitting in the nurse's office, his breathing shallow and quick. His lips looked a little blue around the edges. Hey, baby. She knelt beside his chair. How are you feeling? Better now, he wheezed. Sorry, Mama. Don't you dare apologize. This isn't your fault. The new inhaler helped. His breathing got deeper, and the blue tint faded from his lips. But Amara's hands were still shaking when they walked out to the car. Across the street, the black sedan was parked under a tree. The dark-eyed man sat behind the wheel, but he wasn't looking at his phone or reading anything. He was watching them. Mama, who's that man? Malik asked. I don't know, baby. But that wasn't exactly true. She might not know his name, but she was starting to understand that he was dangerous. The question was whether he was dangerous to her or for her. Why is he following us? Amara looked at her 7-year-old son and tried to think of an answer that wouldn't scare him. Sometimes people watch out for other people, like bodyguards. Something like that. They drove home past streets that felt different now, like someone had moved all the furniture while she wasn't looking. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt safe. At home, Malik did his homework while she made dinner. Spaghetti with sauce from a jar. She'd added some frozen vegetables to make it healthier, but they both picked around them. Mama, are we in trouble? Malik asked over his bowl. What makes you think that? You keep looking out the window and you've been sad all week. Smart boy, too smart for his own good sometimes. We're not in trouble, but some not nice people have been bothering Mama, so we need to be extra careful for a while. Like stranger danger? Exactly like stranger danger. After dinner, Malik watched cartoons while she did the dishes. She was rinsing the plates when she heard the sound that had been haunting her dreams. A car door slamming, then another, and another. She looked out the kitchen window. 3 men stood in the parking lot looking up at her apartment. Marcus was one of them. The slick-haired man from the diner was another. Her phone rang. The number was blocked. Hello? You should have taken the money. It was the man from the diner. Now things get complicated. Through the window, she saw him holding a phone to his ear. What do you want? Come down. Alone. We'll talk. No. Then we'll come up. The line went dead. Amara grabbed Malik and pulled him away from the living room window. A rock hit the glass, spider-webbing it, but not breaking it all the way through. Malik started to cry. Not the loud crying of a tantrum, but the quiet, scared crying that broke her heart. It's okay, baby. We're okay. She held him close and called 911. The operator sounded bored. What's your emergency? There are men outside my apartment throwing rocks. They're threatening me. Are they on your property? The parking lot. That's not private property, ma'am, if they're not breaking any laws. Another rock hit the window. This one cracked it worse. They're throwing rocks at my window. I'll send someone when a unit becomes available. The line went dead. Amara looked down at the parking lot. The men were still there, but they weren't throwing rocks anymore. They were just standing there, waiting. She called her neighbor, Mrs. Chen. No answer. She called her friend from work. Voicemail. She was about to call her sister in Atlanta when she heard a sound that made her heart skip. Sirens. But they didn't stop. They went right past her building. A new sound reached her ears. Car doors slamming again. But different this time, quieter, more controlled. When she looked out the window, the three men were walking quickly toward a beat-up sedan. They got in and drove away without looking back. The black sedan was parked at the curb where it hadn't been before. The dark-eyed man stood beside it, his hands in his coat pockets. He wasn't doing anything threatening, just standing there. But somehow his presence had made the other men leave. Her phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number. Next time we don't wait. Then another text from a different number. The street last night was bad air. This is worse. Malik had stopped crying, but he was still pressed against her side. Mama, I'm scared. I know, baby, me too. And that was the truth. She was scared. Scared for Malik, scared for herself, scared of what Marcus and his friends might do next. But she was also starting to be scared of something else. She was starting to be scared of how safe she felt when the dark-eyed man was around. The knock came at 9 o'clock, just after she'd gotten Malik settled in front of a movie. It was soft, polite, not the kind of knock angry men made. She looked through the peephole and saw two men in expensive coats. One was tall and lean with kind eyes. The other was the man from the accident, the one who'd been following her. "We just want to talk," the tall one said. His voice was gentle. "About what happened tonight. I don't want to talk. I'm Luca Romano. This is Dario Vitale. We're here to help. I don't need help. The broken glass says otherwise." She looked back at Malik. He was absorbed in his movie, but she could see the tension in his small shoulders. This wasn't a conversation for little ears. 5 minutes, she said through the door. "Then you leave." She opened the door with the chain still on. Dario Vitale. So that was his name. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes and the careful way he held himself, like someone who was used to being in control. "The men who were here," he said without preamble, "they won't come back tonight." "How can you know that?" "Because they know I'm here." "And who exactly are you?" Luca and Dario exchanged a look. "Someone who doesn't like bullies," Dario said finally. It wasn't really an answer, but something in his voice made her believe him. "What do they want with me?" "Wrong place, wrong time," Luca said. "Your car accident last night, it interrupted something, made some people angry." "What kind of something?" Another look between the men. "The kind of something that doesn't involve you," Dario said, "but they think it does now." "So this is your fault?" "Yes." The simple answer surprised her. Most men would have made excuses. "What are you going to do about it?" she asked. "Keep you safe." "I can keep myself safe." "Can you?" He gestured toward the cracked window. "How did that work out tonight?" Heat flashed through her. "You don't know anything about me. I know you worked 2 jobs to feed your son. I know you couldn't afford to fix your car without help. I know you called the police tonight and they didn't come." His voice was quiet, but it cut like a blade. "I know you're scared and you're trying to be brave, and that's admirable. But brave doesn't stop bullets." "Bullets." Malik looked over from the couch. "Mama, who are you talking to?" "Just some men who wanted to check on us, baby. Go back to your movie." She looked back at Dario and Luca. "You need to leave. Now. We have a safe place," Luca said quietly. "Just for tonight, until we can figure this out. I'm not going anywhere with you. I don't even know you." "Fair enough," Dario said. "But you should know that they're not done. And next time, they might not wait for you to come downstairs." As if to prove his point, her phone buzzed. Another text from the blocked number. "Wrong turn saved a life. You're in the way now." The blood drained from her face. "What does that mean?" she whispered. "It means," Dario said carefully, "that your car accident last night wasn't just bad luck. You stopped something from happening, something they'd been planning." "Stopped what?" "You saved my life," he said simply. "Now they want to use you to hurt me." The words hit her like cold water. She looked at Malik, still watching his movie, and felt something break inside her chest. "How do I make this stop?" "You don't," Luca said. "We do. And what does that cost me?" "Nothing," Dario said. "Just trust." "I don't trust anyone." "I know. But your son needs you alive." Another text buzzed on her phone. This one was a picture. It was Malik's school. "Pack a bag," she said quietly. "We're going." Through the thin walls of the apartment, she could hear Mrs. Chen's television. Normal life going on, like the world wasn't falling apart. Like her safe, small world wasn't crumbling around her. But as she zipped up their overnight bag, she realized something. For the first time in years, she wasn't facing the darkness alone. And somehow that scared her almost as much as everything else. The townhouse sat on a quiet street, lined with old trees and expensive cars. Even in the dark, Amara could tell it was the kind of place she'd only seen in movies. High iron gates, security cameras that moved when they passed, and windows that looked like they cost more than her rent. "This is temporary," she said, as Dario punched in a code at the gate. "Of course," he agreed, but something in his voice made her think he didn't believe it any more than she did. Luca carried their bags while Dario led them up stone steps to a heavy wooden door. Inside, warm light spilled across marble floors and thick rugs. Everything looked like it belonged in a museum. Malik pressed closer to her side. "It's really big, Mama." "Yes, it is." "The room at the top of the stairs is yours," Dario said to her. "The one next to it is for Malik. There's a bathroom between them." "What about house rules?" she asked. "I need to know what you expect." "Respect the closed doors. Don't answer the phone or the front door. The kitchen is always open. Anything else, just ask." He paused. "This isn't a prison. You're free to move around inside the perimeter." "What's the perimeter?" "The fence line. The cameras will track anything that moves beyond it." The words should have scared her. Instead, they made her feel something she hadn't felt in months. Safe. "How long do we stay?" "Until it's handled." "What does handled mean?" Dario and Luca exchanged another one of those looks. "It means you don't have to be afraid anymore," Luca said quietly. Malik tugged on her shirt. "Mama, can I look around?" "Stay where I can see you," she said. He wandered into what looked like a living room. Everything was dark wood and leather, but somehow it didn't feel cold. In the corner sat a piano with its lid closed. Malik walked over to it like it was calling his name. He reached out one finger and pressed a single white key. The note hung in the air like a question nobody knew how to answer. Dario went very still. His whole body tensed, like someone had just pointed a gun at him. "I'm sorry," Amara said quickly. "Malik, don't touch." "It's fine," Dario said, but his voice sounded rough around the edges. The note faded into silence. "Bedtime, baby," Amara said. "We've had a long day." The room Dario had given her was bigger than her entire apartment. The bed had more pillows than she knew what to do with, and the bathroom had a tub the size of a small pool, but she couldn't sleep. Every sound made her jump. Cars passing on the street, the house settling, footsteps in the hallway that might have been Dario checking the locks, or might have been her imagination. Around midnight, she heard voices downstairs. Too quiet to make out words, but she recognized Dario's low tone and Luca's higher one, planning something, deciding her fate without asking her opinion. She was used to that. Men had been making decisions about her life since she was 17 and pregnant with no ring on her finger. Marcus had made decisions. Her father had made decisions. Even the judge who'd given Marcus visitation rights had made decisions. But this felt different. These men weren't trying to control her. They were trying to protect her. She wasn't sure which was more dangerous. Morning came with the smell of coffee and something that made her stomach growl. Amara found the kitchen by following her nose. An older woman with silver hair and kind eyes stood at the stove, stirring something in a pan. She looked up when Amara walked in. "You must be Amara. I'm Bianca." Her accent was soft and musical. "I hope you slept well." "Some. Thank you for all this." "Nonsense. Would you like coffee?" "I made eggs." The eggs were perfect, fluffy and golden with cheese melted through them. Malik ate 2 helpings and asked for thirds. "Where's Mr. Vitale?" Amara asked. Dario had to leave early. Business. Bianca's face didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "He'll be back this afternoon." "What kind of business?" "The kind that keeps food on the table." It wasn't really an answer, but Amara didn't push. Some questions were better left unasked. After breakfast, Bianca showed them around. The house was bigger than it looked from outside. 3 floors, 6 bedrooms, and a library that made Malik's eyes go wide. "Can I read these books?" he asked. "Of course," Bianca said. "A house full of books is a house full of friends." They ended up in front of a door at the end of the second-floor hallway. This one was different from the others. Heavier, with a lock that looked like it hadn't been opened in years. "What's in there?" Malik asked. Bianca glanced at Amara. "Memory." "What kind of memory?" "The kind that needs to rest." But Malik was 7 and curious about everything. "Can we see?" "No, baby," Amara said quickly. "Some doors stay closed." Bianca nodded approvingly. Wise words. They went back downstairs to the living room. Malik gravitated toward the piano again, but this time he didn't touch it. He just stood there looking at it like it might bite him. "Do you play?" Bianca asked him. "A little. At school." but our teacher says I need practice. Practice is how we get better at everything. Mama can't afford a piano. Amara's cheeks burned. Malik, it's the truth, Bianca said gently. Nothing wrong with the truth. Around lunchtime, Dario came home. Amara heard his car in the driveway and found herself watching from the window like a wife waiting for her husband. The thought made her uncomfortable. He came through the front door looking tired. His perfect suit was still perfect, but there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there that morning. Everything all right here? He asked Bianca. Perfect. The boy asked about piano lessons. Dario's jaw tightened almost too fast to notice. I see. I told him practice makes better, Bianca continued, like she hadn't seen his reaction. Maybe someone could show him a few things. Maybe. But Amara could tell he didn't mean it. At dinner, Dario suggested that she might want a driver for work. I can drive myself, she said. It would be safer. It would look like I'm being kept. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. Is that what you think? That I'm keeping you, aren't you? Malik looked back and forth between them like he was watching a tennis match. I'm protecting you, Dario said finally. What's the difference? Protection honors choice. Keeping takes it away. She studied his face, looking for lies. But his grey eyes were steady and serious. I need to work, she said. I need my own money. I understand. Do you? Because most men think they understand women's independence until it gets inconvenient. I'm not most men. No, she agreed. You're not. The next morning, her phone rang while she was drinking coffee with Bianca. Miss Johnson, this is Dale from the diner. I'm sorry, but I can't put you back on the schedule. Too much complication. Her heart sank. What kind of complication? The kind where customers stop coming because they're afraid. Dale? I'm sorry, Amara, I really am. But I got other people to think about. The line went dead. She stared at her phone, feeling something cold settle in her stomach. Bad news, Bianca asked gently. I just lost my job. That afternoon, when Dario came home, she was waiting in the living room with her arms crossed. You got me fired. He didn't deny it. Not directly. What does that mean? It means the people who want to hurt you made it clear that anyone who employs you will have problems. So I'm supposed to just, what? Live off your charity. You're supposed to stay alive. I can't live without working. I won't. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Tony? It's Dario. I need a favor. Delivery route. Part-time. Someone reliable. No, she drives her own car. Cash? End of shift. Yes, I'll vouch for her. He hung up and looked at her. There's a guy who runs clean delivery routes, medical supplies, legal documents, things like that. He could use someone trustworthy for afternoon runs. It pays well. Why would he hire me? Because I asked him to. So I'd be working for you. You'd be working for Tony. I just made the introduction. She wanted to argue, but Malik's inhaler prescription was running low and she couldn't afford to refill it without income. What's the catch? No catch. Just honest work for honest pay. And you get what out of it? Peace of mind. Why do you care about my peace of mind? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because you saved my life. That makes you my responsibility. That night, after Malik went to bed, Amara found herself walking the house like a caged animal. She wasn't used to being still, wasn't used to having time to think. The locked door at the end of the hall seemed to pull at her thoughts. What kind of memory lived behind it? What was Dario hiding? She was standing in front of it when Bianca found her. Curious, the older woman asked. Sorry, I didn't mean to snoop. Questions aren't snooping. Questions are how we understand each other. What's in there? Bianca reached into her apron pocket and pulled out an old-fashioned key. Would you like to see? Amara's heart pounded. Should I? That depends. Can you handle sad stories? I've got plenty of my own. Bianca nodded and turned the key. The lock clicked open with a sound like a sigh. Inside was a small room painted soft yellow, a child's room, but frozen in time. There was a tiny bed with a pink comforter, a bookshelf full of picture books, toys arranged on shelves like they were waiting for someone to come back and play with them. On the dresser sat a photograph of a woman with dark hair and laughing eyes. Next to it was a picture of a little girl who looked just like her, maybe 4 years old, holding a tiny pink shoe. His wife and daughter, Bianca said softly. Amara's throat closed up. What happened to them? Wrong place, wrong time. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. How long ago? 9 years in December. 9 years. 9 years of keeping this room like a shrine. 9 years of locks and memories and pain too deep for words. He loved them very much, Bianca continued. After they died, he changed, became distant, cold, said he was done with softness, but he let us stay here. Yes, first time in 9 years he's brought anyone into this house who wasn't family or business. Why? That, Bianca said, is a question only he can answer. They stood in the doorway for a long moment, looking at the room where love had lived and died, and somehow still lingered like perfume in the air. He keeps the door locked, Amara said. Some doors need to stay closed until we're ready to open them. How do you know when you're ready? When keeping them closed hurts more than opening them would. Bianca locked the door again and handed Amara the key. Maybe you'll know when that time comes. Amara stared at the small piece of metal in her palm. It felt heavier than it should have. I don't understand why you're giving this to me. Because, Bianca said with a sad smile, some locks need a different hand to turn them. The next morning, Malik woke up coughing. Not the deep, scary cough that meant a hospital trip, but the little cough that meant his asthma was bothering him. Amara gave him his morning treatment and made him promise to use his inhaler if it got worse at school. I will, Mama, I promise. She walked him to the car that would take him to school. Dario had arranged for a driver, and she'd stopped arguing about it when she realized Malik liked the man. His name was Roberto, and he spoke Italian to Malik, who thought it was the coolest thing ever. Ciao, Signora Amara, Roberto said with a grin. Ciao, Roberto. Take care of my boy. Always. She watched them drive away, then got in the loaner car to start her new job. Tony's delivery service was exactly what Dario had said, clean and legal. Medical supplies to doctors' offices, legal documents to law firms, flowers to people celebrating good news. Nothing that made her feel dirty or scared. The pay was better than the diner, and Tony treated her with respect. He was a big Italian man with gentle hands and a wife who sent cannoli for the drivers every Friday. You're Dario's friend, he said on her first day. It wasn't a question. Something like that. Good man, Dario, loyal. You can trust loyal. By the end of the week, she was starting to feel like maybe things might work out. Malik was doing well at school. The new job was steady. The house felt more like home every day. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she was living in someone else's life, wearing someone else's clothes, and sleeping in someone else's bed, and pretending everything was normal. Friday afternoon, she came home to find Malik and Dario in the living room. Malik was sitting at the piano bench, his small hands trying to find the right keys. Dario stood beside him, not quite touching, but close enough to help. Like this, Dario was saying. His voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. One finger at a time, don't rush. Malik played a simple melody, just 5 notes, but they sounded right together. Good, Dario said. Again. This time the melody was smoother. Malik's face lit up with pride. Mama, did you hear? Mr. Dario is teaching me piano. Amara looked at Dario. He was watching Malik's hands on the keys like they might disappear if he looked away. I heard, baby. It sounded beautiful. Can I show you the song tomorrow? Malik asked Dario. If you practice. I will, I promise. After Malik went upstairs to wash his hands before dinner, Amara found herself alone with Dario in the living room. Thank you, she said, for teaching him. He's a good student. The piano. It's hard for you. He didn't answer, but she saw his hands clench into fists. You don't have to hurt yourself to make my son happy. I'm not hurting myself, aren't you? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something in his grey eyes that made her chest tight. Some pain is worth carrying, he said quietly, if it brings joy to someone else. That's not fair to you. Fair doesn't matter. What matters is that he smiles when he plays. And what about when you smile? The question hung between them like a bridge neither of them knew how to cross. I don't remember how, he said finally. Maybe, she said, surprising herself with her boldness. It's time to learn again. That night, as she lay in the big bed in the room that wasn't really hers, Amara thought about locked doors and piano music, and the way Dario's hands had almost touched hers when they both reached for the same glass of water at dinner. She thought about the key Bianca had given her, and the trust it represented. And she thought about how strange it was to feel safe in the house of a man who was clearly dangerous to other people, but who treated her son like he was made of spun glass and precious things. Outside her window, she could hear the soft sound of piano music drifting up from downstairs. Just a simple melody, played slowly and carefully, like someone trying to remember how to feel again. She closed her eyes and let the music wash over her, and for the first time in years she fell asleep without checking the locks twice. 2 weeks passed like pages in a book Amara was afraid to finish reading. Every day brought small moments that felt too good to be real. Malik practicing piano while she cooked dinner. Bianca teaching her how to make pasta from scratch. Dario coming home each evening and asking about their day, like he really wanted to know. It was the kind of life she'd stopped dreaming about years ago, but dreams had a way of turning into nightmares when you weren't careful. Monday afternoon, Malik came home from school with tears in his eyes and a crumpled paper in his backpack. "What's wrong, baby?" Amara knelt down to his level. "I can't do the music assignment." He showed her the paper. "We have to play a song for our families, but I don't know enough yet." The assignment was simple. Each student had to perform a piece of music for their family members during the school's spring showcase. Most kids would play recorder or sing a simple song. "You've been learning piano with Mr. Dario," she said. "Maybe you could play the melody he taught you." "But it's not good enough. The other kids have been playing instruments for years." Before Amara could answer, Dario's voice came from the doorway. "What's not good enough?" Malik wiped his nose on his sleeve. "My piano playing. For the school thing." Dario stepped into the room but kept his distance, like always. "Show me what you know." They went to the living room. Malik sat at the piano bench and played the 5-note melody Dario had taught him. His small fingers found each key carefully, and the sound was sweet and clear. When he finished, Dario was quiet for a long moment. "That was beautiful," he said finally, "but it's too short and too easy. Music isn't about hard or easy. It's about feeling." "But the other kids aren't you." Dario moved closer to the piano. "You want to learn something special?" Malik's eyes lit up. "Yes. It will take practice, every day. I can do that, and you might make mistakes. That's okay." Dario sat down on the bench beside Malik, careful not to touch but close enough to guide. "This song, it was my daughter's favorite." The air in the room seemed to hold its breath. "She used to sing along when I played it. She had a voice like a bell." Amara felt tears prick her eyes. She'd never heard him talk about his daughter before. "What was her name?" Malik asked softly. "Sophia. She would have been about your age now. Do you miss her?" "Every day." Malik nodded, like this made perfect sense. "I miss my daddy sometimes, even though he wasn't very nice to Mama." Dario's hands stilled over the keys. "Missing someone doesn't mean they were perfect. No, it just means they were ours." And with that simple wisdom from a 7-year-old boy, something shifted in the room. Dario's shoulders relaxed just a fraction, and when he started to play, the music that came from the piano was like nothing Amara had ever heard. It was a lullaby, but not a sad one. It was full of love and loss and hope all tangled together like golden thread. "Can you teach me that?" Malik whispered. "If you're sure you want to learn it." "I'm sure." For the next hour, Amara watched the two of them work together, Dario's hands guiding Malik's to the right keys, his voice patient and gentle as he explained each note. Malik's face serious with concentration, but glowing with joy. And slowly, impossibly, the melody began to take shape under her son's small fingers. That night, after Malik was asleep, Amara found Dario in the kitchen making tea. "Thank you," she said, "for today, for the music. He's a natural, just needs confidence." "I meant thank you for talking about Sophia." His hands went still around the teacup. He asked. You didn't have to answer. "Yes, I did." He looked up at her, and she saw something raw in his grey eyes. "He trusted me with his sadness. I owed him the same. Is that what this is? Trust? I don't know what else to call it." She poured herself tea and sat across from him at the kitchen table. The house was quiet around them, peaceful in a way that made her heart ache. "Tell me about her," she said softly. "Sophia." "You don't want to hear that?" "Yes, I do." He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "She was 4 when she died, tiny for her age, but fierce. She used to stand on a step stool to help her mother cook, wearing this little apron with ducks on it." He smiled, and it was the first real smile she'd seen from him. "She called me Papa Bear because I was big and gruff in the mornings." "What was she like?" "Curious about everything. She'd ask 100 questions before breakfast. Why is the sky blue? Why do birds sing? Why do flowers smell pretty?" His hands wrapped around his teacup like it was anchoring him. "Anna used to say she got that from me, the need to understand how things worked. Anna was your wife, my everything." The words came out broken. "She was a teacher, elementary school. She said she fell in love with me because I read books instead of just looking tough." What happened to them? December 15th, 9 years ago, Anna was picking Sophia up from dance class. Some kid, 19 years old, had been drinking at a college party, ran a red light going 60 in a 35 zone. His voice went flat and cold. They died on impact. He walked away with a cut on his forehead. Amara's heart clenched. I'm sorry. The worst part was that I was supposed to pick them up. But I had a meeting. Business that couldn't wait. He laughed, but it sounded like glass breaking. Business that meant nothing. Business that I don't even remember now. It wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? If I'd been there, if I'd made different choices, they'd still be alive. You don't know that. I know I failed them when they needed me most. She reached across the table before she could stop herself. Her fingers brushed his, and he flinched like she'd burned him. Sorry, she said, pulling back. No, it's... He stared at the place where she'd touched him. I haven't... Since they died, I haven't touched a woman. Haven't wanted to. Why? Because it felt like betrayal, like I was forgetting them. And now? Now I think maybe I was punishing myself instead of honoring them. Their hands lay on the table between them, inches apart but feeling like miles. After Marcus left, Amara said quietly, I promised myself I'd never depend on a man again. Never let someone else have power over my life or Malik's life. What changed? You did. The words came out before she could stop them. You protect without controlling. You help without taking. You give without asking for payment. Maybe I'm just better at hiding what I want. What do you want? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw hunger in his eyes. Not just physical hunger, though that was there too. Something deeper. The hunger of a man who'd been starving himself for 9 years and had finally remembered what food tasted like. I want things I shouldn't want, he said. Things that scare me. Like what? Like touching your hand without feeling guilty. Like hearing you laugh without thinking I don't deserve it. Like watching you with Malik and imagining what it would be like if this was real, instead of just temporary. The confession hung between them like a bridge made of spider silk. Beautiful and fragile, and one wrong word away from breaking. Who says it has to be temporary? She whispered. Before he could answer, her phone buzzed on the counter. She almost ignored it, but the sound cut through the moment like a knife. The text was from an unknown number, but she knew who'd sent it. You look happy, that's about to change. Attached was a photo of Malik's school playground. Malik was in the picture, playing on the swings during recess. Her red circle had been drawn around him. The blood drained from her face. What is it? Dario was on his feet before she could answer. She showed him the phone. His face went hard as stone. Pack a bag, he said. We're leaving tonight. Where are we going? Somewhere safer. I thought this place was safe. It was. But they're escalating. He was already moving, pulling his own phone from his pocket. Luca, we need to move. Now. Yes, the river house. 20 minutes. He hung up and looked at her. I need you to trust me. I do trust you. Even if it means leaving everything behind again. She thought about Malik's laugh when he played piano, about the way Dario's eyes softened when he looked at her son, about the feeling of safety she'd been afraid to believe in. Yes, she said, I trust you. But as they packed their bags for the second time in 3 weeks, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. That somewhere in the darkness, Marcus and his friends were planning something that would change everything, and she was right. The river house sat on 5 acres of wooded land, 30 minutes outside the city. It was smaller than the townhouse, but somehow felt bigger, with windows that looked out on water and trees instead of streets and buildings. It's beautiful, Amara said as they carried their bags inside. It was Anna's favorite place, Dario said quietly. She used to say the water made her feel clean. The house was furnished but felt empty, like a shell waiting for life to fill it again. Malik explored while the adults talked security with Luca. The perimeter is wider here, Luca explained. Motion sensors in the trees, cameras at all the access points. If a rabbit moves wrong, we'll know about it. What about school? Amara asked. Homeschooling for now, Dario said. Bianca knows someone who can help. For how long? Until it's over. And when will it be over? Dario and Luca exchanged one of their looks. Soon, Luca said. That night, Amara lay in a bed that smelled like lavender and tried to convince herself that everything would be okay. Outside her window, she could hear water lapping against the shore and wind moving through trees. It should have been peaceful, but peace felt too much like the calm before a storm. Around midnight, she heard piano music drifting through the walls. Not the lullaby this time, but something sadder. Something that sounded like a man trying to play his heart back together, one note at a time. She got up and followed the music downstairs. Dario sat at an old upright piano in the living room, his hands moving over keys that had probably been silent for years. He didn't notice her at first, lost in the music and whatever memories it carried. When the song ended, he looked up and saw her. "I'm sorry, did I wake you?" "No, I couldn't sleep." "Me neither." She sat down on the couch behind him. "Will you play something else? What would you like to hear?" "Something happy." He thought for a moment, then began to play. It was a waltz, light and sweet, the kind of music that made you want to dance, even if you didn't know how. "Anna used to dance to this," he said without stopping. "In the kitchen while dinner cooked, she'd grab Sophia's hands and spin her around until they both got dizzy. It's lovely." She was lovely. His hands never faltered on the keys, the kind of woman who made everything around her better just by being there. Like sunshine. Exactly like sunshine. The music filled the room with warmth and light, and something that felt almost like hope. "Do you think they would have liked me?" Amara asked. "Anna and Sophia?" Dario's hands stilled on the keys. He turned to look at her, and in his eyes she saw surprise and something deeper. "Anna would have loved you," he said. She had a soft spot for strong women who protected their children. "And Sophia? Sophia would have adopted Malik as her little brother within 5 minutes. She was like that, collecting people and making them part of her world. They sound wonderful." They were. He turned back to the piano. "But they're gone, and I'm still here. That's not your fault, isn't it?" "No, it's just life. Ugly, unfair, heartbreaking life. How do you stand it? After everything Mark has put you through, how do you keep going?" She thought about it for a moment. "Malik. At first it was just Malik. I had to keep going for him. But then I realized that surviving wasn't enough. I wanted to live, really live, be happy, laugh, maybe even love again." "And do you? Love again?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "I'm starting to," she said quietly. "It scares me." "Why?" "Because love makes you vulnerable. And I swore I'd never be vulnerable again. But you are here with me." "Yes." "Why?" "Because you make me feel safe enough to be vulnerable." He turned to face her fully, and she could see the war happening in his eyes. Want fighting with guilt, hope battling with fear. "Amara, I know, it's complicated. It's not that. It's..." He ran a hand through his dark hair. "I don't know how to do this anymore. How to care about someone without being terrified of losing them. You don't have to know, you just have to try. What if I mess it up? What if you don't?" They sat in the quiet for a long moment, the piano silent between them. "I should go to bed," she said finally. "Yeah, me too." But neither of them moved. "Amara." "Yes?" "Thank you for bringing music back into this house. I didn't do anything. You brought Malik. You brought yourself. You brought life." He stood up from the piano bench. "This place has been dead for years. Now it feels like home again." He walked toward the stairs, but stopped when he reached where she sat. "Good night," he said softly. "Good night." For just a moment, his hand hovered near her shoulder. She could feel the heat from his skin, could sense how badly he wanted to touch her, and how afraid he was to try. Then he pulled back and went upstairs, leaving her alone with the piano and the echo of music, and the growing certainty that she was falling in love with a man who might never be able to love her back. The next morning brought sunshine, and the sound of Malik's laughter echoing through the house. He discovered the tire swing that hung from an old oak tree by the water and was having the time of his life. "Higher, Mama, push me higher." Amara gave the swing another push and watched her son soar toward the sky. For a moment, she could pretend they were just a normal family spending a normal day by the lake. "He's fearless," Dario said from behind her. She turned and found him watching them from the porch, a cup of coffee in his hands. "He gets that from his father." "The good parts?" "Yeah, the good parts." Dario walked over to them, careful to stay a safe distance from the swing. "Want to try?" Malik called to him. "I'm too big for swings." "No, you're not. Mama, tell him he's not too big." Amara grinned. "You're not too big. See?" Malik jumped off the swing mid-arc, landing in the soft grass with practiced ease. "Your turn." Before Dario could protest, Malik was pushing the empty tire toward him. "I don't think..." "Please, just once." And because Malik's smile could melt stone, and because Amara was laughing, and because the morning sun was warm on their faces, Dario sat down on the tire swing. He looked ridiculous. 6 feet of Italian muscle and expensive clothes perched on a child's toy. But when Malik gave him a push and he started to move, something amazing happened. Dario Vitale, feared boss of the city's most powerful crime family, threw back his head and laughed. It was the first time Amara had heard him laugh, and the sound went straight to her heart like an arrow. Push him higher, Mama. So she did. She put her hands on Dario's strong back and pushed, and felt the solid warmth of him through his shirt. This time he didn't flinch away from her touch. "This is insane," he said, but he was still laughing. "Good insane or bad insane?" Malik asked. "Good insane. Definitely good insane." They played by the water until lunchtime. Malik skipped stones while Dario showed him how to find the flat ones. Amara watched them together and felt something settle in her chest that had been restless for years. This was what happiness felt like. But happiness, she'd learned, was a fragile thing. That afternoon, while Malik napped and Dario made phone calls in his study, Amara decided to unpack their bags properly. They might be here for a while, and it would help Malik feel more settled if their things had places to belong. She was putting Malik's clothes in the dresser when she found the note. It was folded small and tucked inside the pocket of his school backpack. Her hands shook as she opened it. "Tonight, midnight. Come alone to the old loading dock on River Road, or we take the boy." Her legs gave out. She sat down hard on the bed, the note crushing in her fist. They knew where Malik went to school. They'd gotten close enough to slip this into his backpack, close enough to touch her son. The paper trembled in her hands as she read the rest. "You have something that belongs to us. Come alone or everyone you care about pays the price." She thought about telling Dario, thought about running to his study and showing him the note and letting him handle it like he'd handled everything else. But then she thought about Malik's laugh on the tire swing, about the way Dario's face had looked when he played piano with her son, about the life they were building together in this house by the water. She couldn't let them destroy it, couldn't let them hurt the people she loved because of her. So she made a choice. At 11:30 that night, while Dario worked in his study and Malik slept peacefully in his bed, Amara Johnson slipped out of the house and drove toward whatever was waiting for her in the darkness. She left her phone on the kitchen counter with a text message ready to send. "Just in case. I'm sorry. This is the only way to keep you both safe. Don't come looking for me." But she didn't send it, not yet. First, she had to try to end this herself. The loading dock was exactly where the note said it would be. Dark and empty, and smelling of rust and river water. She parked the car and walked to the edge of the pier, her heart hammering against her ribs. A van pulled up exactly at midnight. 3 men got out. Marcus, the slick-haired man from the diner, and a third man she'd never seen before, but who looked like trouble in an expensive suit. "Well, well," Marcus said with that same sharp smile. "Look who decided to be smart for once. What do you want?" "What we've always wanted. What you owe us." "I don't owe you anything." "That's where you're wrong." The man in the expensive suit stepped forward. "My name is Enzo Marchetti. Your boyfriend interrupted some business of mine. Cost me a lot of money, a lot of reputation. He's not my boyfriend." "No? Then you won't mind helping us send him a message." "What kind of message?" Enzo smiled, and it was the coldest thing she'd ever seen, the kind that hurts. Before she could run, before she could scream, before she could do anything at all, something hard hit the back of her head. The last thing she heard before darkness took her was the sound of a van door slamming, and somewhere in the distance, carried on the night wind, she thought she heard piano music. But maybe that was just her heart breaking. Amara woke up in darkness that smelled like motor oil and fear. Her head pounded where they'd hit her, and her hands were zip-tied behind her back. She was lying on a concrete floor in what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Moonlight filtered through broken windows high above, casting strange shadows on rusted machinery. "She's awake," someone said. Footsteps echoed across the concrete. Marcus appeared in her line of sight, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. "Welcome back, baby. Miss me?" She tried to sit up, but her head spun. "Where am I?" "Somewhere your boyfriend will never think to look." "What do you want?" "Same thing I've always wanted. Respect, money, and to watch Dario Vitale learn what happens when people cross the Marchetti family." Enzo stepped out of the shadows, looking calm and collected in his expensive suit. "How you see, Miss Johnson, your car accident disrupted a very important business meeting. Dario was supposed to drive down that street at exactly 9:47 p.m. Instead, he was delayed by 20 minutes dealing with your little mishap. So the men who were waiting to kill him gave up and went home. You saved his life without even knowing it." The words hit her like ice water. She'd saved Dario's life by crashing into him. If she'd been 30 seconds earlier or later, he might be dead. "That's very sweet," Enzo continued, "but it left me with a problem. I'd promised certain people that Dario Vitale would be eliminated. When that didn't happen, I looked unreliable. That's not my fault." "No, but you're going to help me fix it." Marcus pulled out his phone and started recording a video. "Go ahead," he said. Tell your boyfriend what's going to happen to you if he doesn't come alone to collect you. I won't do it. Oh, I think you will. Enzo nodded to someone behind her. A fourth man appeared, dragging something that made her blood go cold. Malik's backpack, the one with his inhaler inside. We picked this up from his school, Enzo said conversationally. Amazing how easy it is to walk onto a playground during recess. Security these days is terrible. You didn't. The words came out as a whisper. We didn't what? Touch him. Not yet. But the day is young. Terror flooded through her like poison. Please, he's just a little boy. He can't breathe without his medicine. Then you better hope Daddy shows up fast. He's not his father. No? He acts like it. Playing piano, reading bedtime stories, tucking you both in safe and sound. Marcus's voice was cruel. Must be nice, living in a fairy tale. What do you want me to say? Tell him where to find you. Tell him to come alone. Tell him what happens if he brings back up. And if I don't? Enzo held up a photo on his phone. It showed the elementary school parking lot. In the background, barely visible, was Malik getting into Roberto's car. We know his schedule, we know his route. We know where he goes and when. Enzo's smile was ice cold. One phone call, and your son disappears. Poof. The warehouse tilted around her. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at that photo and imagine Malik scared and alone and calling for her. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll do it. Marcus held up the phone and started recording. Tell him the old Riverside Cannery. Building 3, come alone or the kid pays. She looked directly into the camera, hoping Dario would see the truth in her eyes even if she couldn't say it out loud. Dario, I'm at the Riverside Cannery, Building 3. They want you to come alone or they'll hurt Malik. Her voice broke on her son's name. I'm sorry. This is all my fault. Marcus stopped recording and sent the video. Now we wait. At the river house, Dario was going out of his mind. He'd found Amara's phone on the kitchen counter at 12:30 a.m. along with her unsent message. By 1 a.m., every man he could trust was scouring the city looking for her. Nothing. She'd vanished like smoke. Maybe she went for a drive, Luca suggested. But they both knew better. At 2 a.m. the video arrived. Dario watched it 3 times, memorizing every detail. The concrete floor meant warehouse or factory. The sound quality suggested high ceilings and empty space. The shadows on the walls looked like industrial equipment. Riverside Cannery, Luca said after watching it. Has to be. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap. They want me dead. Of course they do. Dario looked at his oldest friend and most trusted advisor. What would you do? Go anyway. Even knowing it's suicide. Especially knowing it's suicide. Luca's face was grim. That woman saved your life, Dario. She brought music back to your house and joy back to your heart. If you let her die to save yourself, you'll be dead anyway. Just breathing. Dario nodded slowly. He'd already known what he had to do, but hearing Luca say it made it real. What about Malik? Roberto's watching him. The boy's safe. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. If it does, promise me you'll take care of them. Both of them. Luca gripped his shoulder. I promise. But you're coming home, brother. We both are. At 3 a.m. they loaded weapons into the car and drove toward the cannery. At 3:15 Malik woke up from a nightmare and found his mother's bed empty. Where's Mama? Malik asked Roberto, who was dozing in a chair by the window. The big Italian man woke up instantly. She went to help Mr. Dario with something. In the middle of the night? Roberto had been around children long enough to know that lies never worked for long. Some bad men took her. Mr. Dario went to get her back. Malik's face went very pale, but he didn't cry. Instead, he walked to the old upright piano and sat down on the bench. He began to play the lullaby Dario had taught him, Sophia's favorite song. The melody was shaky at first, but it got stronger with each note. What are you doing, little man? Roberto asked gently. Sending them music, Malik said, so they remember to come home. And so, while Dario drove through the night toward danger, and Amara sat tied up in a warehouse trying not to panic, a 7-year-old boy played piano in an empty house by the river, sending love across the darkness like a prayer. The Riverside Cannery had been abandoned for 20 years. Broken windows stared like dead eyes across the parking lot, and weeds grew through cracks in the concrete. Dario parked his car in plain sight and walked toward Building 3. He was armed but tried not to show it. His hands hung loose at his sides, and he moved with the fluid grace of a man comfortable with violence. Luca and 4 other men were positioned around the perimeter, but far enough away that they couldn't be seen. The plan was simple. Get Amara out alive. Everything else was secondary. The warehouse door was open. Inside, work lights had been set up to illuminate a circle in the center of the vast space. Amara sat on a chair in the middle of the light, her hands bound behind her. Even from a distance, Dario could see she was trying to be brave. Her back was straight, and her chin was up, but her eyes were wide with fear. "Right on time," Enzo called from the shadows. "I appreciate punctuality. Let her go." "Of course, after we finish our business." Marcus stepped into the light, grinning like a predator. 2 other men flanked him, both armed. "Funny how things work out," Marcus said. "You take my woman, I take yours. She was never your woman." "Maybe not, but she was mine first. Doesn't that count for something?" "No." Dario stepped closer to Amara. She looked up at him, and he saw something in her eyes that made his chest tight. Not just fear, not just relief. Love, pure and simple and completely unguarded. "I'm sorry," she mouthed. He shook his head slightly. "Nothing to be sorry for." "Touching," Enzo said. "But we should get on with this. I have other appointments." "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted, you dead." "Then why the games? Why not just kill me?" "Because I want you to understand something first. Every person you care about, everyone you try to protect, will end up suffering because of who you are. Your wife and daughter learned that lesson. Now it's her turn." Rage flowed through Dario like molten metal. "Leave them out of this." "I don't think so. You see, I've done my research on Miss Johnson here. Single mother, works 2 jobs. Struggling to make ends meet. She's exactly the kind of woman who falls for the strong, dangerous man who promises to keep her safe." "Shut up!" "But what she doesn't understand is that men like us don't keep people safe. We get them killed." Enzo nodded to Marcus, who pulled out a gun and pointed it at Amara's head. "Here's how this works," Enzo continued. "You're going to kneel down and put your hands behind your head. Then Marcus is going to put a bullet in your brain. After that, we'll discuss what happens to your little family." "Don't do it," Amara said. "Please, just run." "I'm not leaving you. You have to. For Malik." "No." Dario looked at the woman who had crashed into his life and changed everything. The woman who had brought music back to his house and hope back to his heart. The woman who had saved him in every way a person could be saved. "I love you," he said. The words hung in the air like a blessing and a promise and a vow all rolled into one. "I love you too," she whispered. Marcus laughed. How sweet. Romeo and Juliet in a warehouse. But Dario had stopped listening, because in the shadows behind Marcus, he'd seen movement. A flash of something dark and quick and deadly. Luca. "You want to know the difference between you and me?" Dario said to Enzo. "What's that?" "You think love makes us weak." The lights went out. Chaos erupted in the darkness. Gunshots, shouting, the sound of bodies hitting concrete. Amara felt someone cut her restraints and pull her to her feet. Strong hands guided her away from the gunfire, toward what felt like safety. "Stay down," a voice said. "Luca." More shots. A scream that might have been Marcus. Then silence so complete it felt like the world had stopped breathing. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in red. Marcus lay motionless near the far wall. The 2 other gunmen were down. Enzo was on his knees, his hands behind his head, surrounded by men in dark clothes. And Dario. Dario was leaning against a support pillar, his hand pressed to his shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers. Amara ran to him. "How bad?" she asked, her hands fluttering over his chest, checking for other wounds. "Just a graze. I'm fine." "You're bleeding." "I'm alive. We're both alive. That's what matters." She looked up at his face and saw something there that made her heart skip. The walls were gone. The careful distance he'd maintained for 9 years had crumbled completely. "Did you mean it?" she asked. "What you said before?" "Every word, even though it scares you?" "Especially because it scares me." And then, while sirens wailed in the distance and Luca handled the cleanup and Enzo was led away in handcuffs, Dario Vitale cupped Amara Johnson's face in both hands and kissed her. It was the first kiss he'd given a woman in 9 years. The first touch that wasn't about duty or necessity or keeping someone safe. It was about love, pure and simple and completely unguarded. When they broke apart, they were both shaking. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we go home. To Malik. To our life." "Is that what it is?" "Our life, if you want it to be." She thought about the little boy who was probably still awake, worried about them, about the house by the river where they'd been building something beautiful and fragile and real, about the choice between safety and love, between independence and partnership, between the life she'd planned and the life she'd never dared to dream about. "Yes," she said, "I want it to be." They found Malik asleep at the piano, his head resting on the keys. He woke up when they walked in and his face lit up like Christmas morning. "Mama! Mr. Dario, you came back." "Of course we came back," Amara said, scooping him into her arms. "I promised I'd never leave you." "But the bad men are gone," Dario said. "For good this time." Malik looked back and forth between them, and Amara could see him processing the changes. The way Dario's arm was in a sling, the way she was standing closer to him than usual, the way they were both looking at each other like they'd discovered something precious. "Are you going to stay?" Malik asked Dario. "Like, really stay? Forever?" Dario looked at Amara. She nodded. "If that's what you want," he said. "It is. But—" Malik got that serious look he wore when he was thinking hard. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything. If you marry Mama, does that make you my dad?" The question hit Dario like a physical blow. His face went white, then red, then something beyond color entirely. "Malik," Amara started, but Dario held up his good hand. "That would be up to your mama," he said carefully, "and up to you. I think I'd like that, having a dad who teaches me piano and knows how to make bad men go away. And I think I'd like that too, having a son who's brave and smart and plays music like an angel." "Then it's settled," Malik announced, with the kind of 7-year-old logic that made everything seem simple. "We're a family now." 6 months later, they made it official. Sunday lunch at the River House had become a tradition. Bianca cooked enough food to feed an army. Roberto brought wine from his brother's vineyard, and Luca usually fell asleep on the couch after eating 3 helpings of everything. The dining room table was covered with dishes and laughter, and the easy chaos of people who loved each other without reservation. "Pass the bread," Malik said around a mouthful of pasta. "What do we say?" Amara reminded him. "Please pass the bread, Papa." Dario's hand stilled on his water glass, the same way it did every time Malik called him Papa, like he couldn't quite believe it was real. "Of course," he said, passing the basket, "but finish what's on your plate first." After lunch, while the adults cleaned up, Malik played the piano. He'd gotten good enough to perform at the school showcase and had received a standing ovation. Now he was working on a new piece, a wedding song he'd composed himself for the ceremony. "He's got talent," Roberto said, listening to the music drift in from the living room. "He gets that from his father," Dario said without thinking. Amara looked at him in surprise. It was the first time he'd referred to himself as Malik's father out loud. "What?" he asked, seeing her expression. "Nothing. Just, I like hearing you say it." "Say what?" "That he's your son. He is my son, just like you're my wife." "And how does that feel, being a husband and father again?" Dario considered the question while he dried a plate. Through the doorway he could see Malik's small hands moving over the piano keys with increasing confidence. In the living room, Luca was arguing with Roberto about football, while Bianca knitted something soft and yellow. This house, which had been a tomb for 9 years, was full of life again, full of laughter and music and the kind of love that grew stronger instead of weaker with time. "Terrifying," he said finally, "and perfect. Just like love should be. Just like love should be." That night, after everyone had gone home and Malik was asleep in his room, Amara and Dario sat on the porch overlooking the water. The new photo had found its place on the mantelpiece next to the old ones. Not replacing Anna and Sophia, but honoring them while celebrating the new life that had grown from grief, transformed into purpose. "Do you think they would approve?" Amara asked, following his gaze toward the house. "Anna and Sophia? I think Anna would love watching you boss me around in the kitchen." "I do not boss you around. You absolutely boss me around, and I love it." "And Sophia?" "Sophia would have Malik wrapped around her little finger within minutes. She'd probably convince him to put on shows for the whole neighborhood. I wish I could have met them." "In a way you have. Every time I play piano with Malik, every time I tuck him in at night, every time I hold you and remember what it feels like to be completely happy, they're there." "Is that what this is? Complete happiness? What else would you call it?" Amara looked out over the water, thinking about the journey that had brought them here. A car accident in the rain. Fear and danger and impossible choices. The slow building of trust between 3 broken people who had somehow found a way to heal each other. "I'd call it a miracle," she said finally. "Then we'll take it." "For how long?" "Forever, if we're lucky." And as if to seal the promise, piano music drifted through the screen door behind them. Malik, who was supposed to be asleep, playing the lullaby that had become their family song. The melody that had once meant goodbye had become a song about coming home, about love that was strong enough to survive loss and brave enough to begin again, about the family they'd chosen and the life they'd built and the future that stretched out before them like a road made of music and moonlight and all the small perfect moments that add up to a life well lived.